Welcome to Season 2 of the Erotic Realm podcast, where we explore the world of eroticism, one erotic realm at a time. I'm Em, a sexologist and kinkster. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize desire in all of its forms, including darker desires. Each episode, we dive deep into the psychology of desire with a sexpert, everyday kinkster, or a kink expert. This is an independent podcast. To support it, please consider becoming a paid subscriber at psychologyofdesire.com, where you'll also find deep dives into desire and surveys that you can participate in. You can also sign up there to get the podcast delivered directly to your inbox when it's released. And now for today's episode. Before we get started, I have something very excited to announce. The podcast has been nominated for the Australian Adult Industry Awards in the category of Best Podcast. So if you'd love to vote for the Erotic Realm to win this category, it would be amazing to have your support. I'll put a link to the voting website in the show notes, and I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a click and a vote, and who knows, maybe it will win Best Podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. If you'd like to support the podcast, please consider checking out the brands that support the Erotic Realm. There's Tech, whose tech ring offers fascinating insights into sexual health by tracking erection quality and nocturnal function. Splash Blanket, who create luxurious waterproof blankets designed for comfort, intimacy, and real-life messes. ProDX Health, who offer discreet, at-home STI testing. While Karoo and Lovents make premium pleasure technology, from couple toys to long-distance interactive devices. Then there's Lioness, who are doing something truly unique in sex tech, using biofeedback and orgasm data to help people better understand their arousal. I'm also partnering with Flow and Desire, science-backed libido support supplements designed to support sexual vitality and well-being. These are brands that I find genuinely interesting, science-backed, and I've used them myself, so they come with my recommendation. You can find the links to all of them in the episode description. If you try them, use the links below. It supports the show at no extra cost to you. And now, back to today's conversation. The following episode explores a side of BDSM that often surprises people. The possibility that power, discipline, intimacy, and even pleasure can exist independently of sex itself. My guest today is Ms Hyde, an asexual disciplinarian, BDSM educator, life coach, author, and craftsperson whose work focuses on consent, communication, accountability, and ethical power exchange. Together we explore the psychology of discipline, therapeutic spanking, the foundations for BDSM who are beginners, and why many people misunderstand what power exchange is actually about. We also discuss asexuality within kink, the role of communication in healthy BDSM dynamics, and the importance of repair after rupture, and also how power can become a language for connection rather than control. This is a conversation about agency, responsibility, intimacy, and what lies beyond the vanilla. Enjoy. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm. Today we're exploring the Erotic Realm with Ms Hyde. Welcome, Ms Hyde.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Okay, so to start us off, we'd like to get an idea of who you are outside of sexuality and kink. What do you get up to when you're not exploring these things in your day-to-day life?
So let's call it my vanilla life, I am very much involved with animals, so mostly dogs and cats, the furry kinds. So yeah, I've actually got a very quiet life outside of kink. Yeah.
Sounds peaceful and lovely.
So definitely is.
Yeah. So when you do describe yourself and your eroticism, how do you define your sexuality and your kinky self?
It's very polar opposites actually, because I more dominant leaning switch. What a lot of people can't understand is because my dominant side, the easiest way to describe it is basically as an asexual disciplinarian, where my submissive side, again, is you can almost go very sexually orientated, very almost sex slave like. So it really is complete opposites.
So you have these two sides of yourself. So you're switchy. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Amazing. And what about in terms of your sexuality? Are you attracted to one gender, multiple?
No, I'm definitely straight. I was actually thinking about it the other day because I am on, a few platforms, and I was looking at some of the photos, and I'm like, yep, I'm definitely straight.
Just noticing what drew you in, what grabbed your attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about kinks. What are your top 3 kinks currently? And if you could only explore 3 for the rest of your life, what would they be and why?
I'm very much a spankaholic. I love doing spankings. And with the right person, I love receiving them. I'm not much into other kinds of pain play. And then something that I love as well is I do self-ties. So I absolutely love rope. And then I think, what would the third one be? Oh, gosh. I think that would definitely probably be linked to my submissive side more. And that is definitely kind of my daddy kink that I have there.
I'd like to go a bit deeper into each of them if you're comfortable with that. What is it about spanking that you enjoy?
So for me, it's definitely with regards to the giving side is that I'm able to give somebody else what they need. And it is just absolutely, I start giggling when I do spankings because I enjoy it so much. And obviously, if the bottom starts reacting to it as well, it is a lot of fun, obviously, to see them squirm a little bit. Yes.
And you mentioned that you do self-ties, which I don't think we've spoken about much on the podcast yet. So I'm sure the listeners are curious. What do you mean by self-tying and why do you enjoy it?
So what I enjoy about self-ties is that when I do feel overwhelmed a little bit, or I do actually get into a very amorous mood, I love doing booby harnesses. So self-ties for me is something that really helps calm me down. Or as I said, depending on the mood, it does lean into that a little bit more, especially when you add a vibrator to it.
I'm curious, did you start off being tied by other people and then you decided to tie yourself, or was it always something that you just enjoyed doing by yourself?
It started off with me doing it to myself. I was curious, and I've only been tied by one other person. With what I do and so on, and I think you can speak to it as well, is that, it takes a lot to trust someone with your kinks and so forth. So it's mostly something that I do to myself.
And the last kink that you mentioned out of the top 3 kinks, I believe, was a daddy kink. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is something that came about recently from a dynamic that I was in. I'm very open-minded with people and their kinks and so on. And it wasn't really something that I saw for myself. And with the dynamic that I was in at that stage, it was something that he enjoyed being called, because he's dominant side and the caregiver side and so on. So it definitely opened more doors for me. And it's something that, I now quite enjoy.
Yeah, amazing. We love recent discoveries as well and continued exploration. So really happy to hear that. Let's go back to the beginning then. How did you discover the world of kink? What was that process like for you?
Oh, goodness. I always say it's my mom's fault. I
wasn't expecting that.
So I'm actually a very late bloomer in terms of kink. I've only been involved in it for about the last 5 years. And what happened is that my partner had passed away and I was in a very dark space. And now this is where my mom comes in, because she said to me, you know what, just go and sign up somewhere, find someone you can talk to. And I was like, okay, you know what, I don't have anything to lose. I'm busy going through a very tough time. So, let's try this. And I met someone on a regular dating site. And I think the second or third conversation in, he was like, will you be my dom? And I was like, are you serious? Because, I knew nothing about kink at that stage. I basically knew what people saw in mainstream media. And I was like, okay, you know what? I don't have anything to lose. Let me give this a go. And I became his dom. And then I started realizing, you know what, but I enjoy the discipline side of it more than, the sexual side of it as a dominant. And I then started in a dynamic with someone else where I was, a disciplinarian. And that is also where I'm much more started enjoying doing spankings and so on. So I like telling people that I then kind of became like a life coach with a twist.
Can you take us more into what it means for you to be a disciplinarian without the sexual element? Because a lot of people think that to be a dominant from the outside always involves a sexual element or having sex with the submissive, but you're mentioning that you prefer being a disciplinarian and it's somewhat asexual for you. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yes. So what I realized as well for myself is that as soon as sex is involved, my feelings get involved. I'm very demisexual in that way. And I realized, you know what, I need to sort of separate the two. And I then started, as I said, in this dynamic with this person where we focused purely on the structure and doing spankings as rewards and also as punishments. And I realized that I enjoy that more than the sexual element of it. And it just sort of grew from there and it evolved. And for me now, in my dominant roles, I am purely discipline. I do purely spankings. If someone obviously has a sexual experience during that, they very politely take care of themselves. And also I think it's because, as I said, mostly I don't want my feelings involved there. And obviously, doing what I do, if my personal feelings get involved, then it's going to make matters a lot more awkward going forward.
So you've alluded a couple of times to what you do, life coaching with a twist and doing what you do just now. Can you tell us more about the work that you're doing?
So, as I am based in South Africa, and BDSM and kink is relatively new. and to be, out in the open. And when I started as a disciplinarian, I would have people tell me, but how do you get your pleasure if there's not sex involved? And I realized, what, a lot more education is needed around BDSM and the fact that it can be non-sexual, that sex doesn't have to be involved. And I then started writing a few educational pieces. And what I'm doing now is that I help people where if they've got questions in their dynamics, if it's new dynamics, because I focus mostly on newbies to kink, because I felt, what, when I started in BDSM, there wasn't a lot of educational material around. So that is what I'm doing now, is that I have sessions with couples, throuples, individuals who feel that they want to explore kink more because they're curious. Some feel that, what, they need maybe a refresher on something. So that is what I do at the moment. And then I started writing the books as well.
Amazing. Can you tell us about the book you just mentioned? I believe you've just released a book called Beyond Vanilla. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. What I actually, with Beyond Vanilla, it actually started as a single book, and then the outline of the book actually ended up, becoming a little monster. I ended up with like 1,500 pages. So it's actually been broken up into a series of books now. There's 7 books out there. So Beyond Vanilla focuses on newbies to kink. So the first book, for instance, focuses on the foundations of kink. So communication, honesty, respect, trust, the things that you need, the basics that you need to explore kink.
Amazing. So you mentioned that one of the original inspirations for beginning your writing was that there was this misunderstanding about kink and people wondering how it could be pleasurable without sex. How do you yourself derive pleasure from kink without sex? What's that process like for you?
So for me, it's a thing of, as I mentioned earlier, that I enjoy giving people what they need. I do have a bit of a people-pleasing personality trait, and that is where I derive my pleasure from it, is that so many people aren't able to, get it from their partners or relationships that they're in. And I'm able to help them with that kind of situation. So if somebody comes and sees me and says, what, I feel that I need a spanking and so on, then I'm able to help them with that. And that is where I get my pleasure from kink as a dominant.
And you mentioned that you're quite a late bloomer. I'm not sure if you are public with your age or not and when you actually discovered kink. But I'm curious to know, how do you now look back on your vanilla life before kink? Do you look back and think, oh, it was always there, or that's a different person? How do you view those two different sides of yourself?
So if people follow me on FedLife, they'll see my age there. And I don't mind telling people, I'm turning 46 in July. And so, so I was like, 41 when I officially stepped into the BDSM lifestyle. Before that, I think there was signs here and there, but it wasn't as clear-cut as it is now. When I started in BDSM and exploring what it meant to me and so forth, I realized, I actually ended up finding my little happy place in the world. It is something now that I more than likely will never, ever be able to go back to what my life was before I started exploring BDSM.
And would you want to?
I don't think so. I think with the right person, you might, or it might be a lot less, because I do obviously, with my writing and so on, it's an everyday thing that I work on. So there might be that it's a little bit less than, what it is now in terms of physicality, but it will always be a part of my life and my relationships.
Beautiful. Okay, I want to explore a quote with you now. It's one of the traditions on the podcast. And today's quote is from Jean-Paul Sartre, who was, of course, a 20th century French philosopher. And he is well known for saying, "Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you." So this quote speaks to agency, choice, and how we shape meaning from our experiences, which feels very relevant to kink and power exchange. When you hear that quote, does it resonate with how you see people come into kink, whether that be yourself or the people that you're working with? Do you think power exchange can be a way for people to reclaim agency or a sense of freedom?
Oh, I definitely believe so. One of the reasons why I started doing, the educational content, and also, exploring this with people, is that because something that's very close to my heart is actually therapeutic spanking. And that very much speaks to that quotation, because a lot of people will come to me and say, okay, you know what, I need the spanking because, yes, I do have a masochistic streak, but there was something that happened in my life where that freedom was kind of taken from me. And especially, if they've been in abusive relationships. And this is the thing where if somebody goes and sees someone and about taking back their agency, we've got safe words in kink, where if you're in an abusive relationship, nothing's going to be able to stop that. So a lot of people work on getting their freedom back by going through certain sessions with kink professionals.
And how does that process allow them to get some of their freedom back? Can you take us into maybe some of the common themes you see happening in someone that's going through that process?
So one person that I saw was in an extremely abusive relationship, and they had a very strong masochistic side, and they came to see me, and they were first like, you know what, I don't want to talk about what happened to me. And that's the thing, when you do this, you follow their lead. And I was like, 100%, we don't have to discuss anything. We just do the spanking because that's what you're asking for. And to cut a long story short with that is that by the end of the session, this person was just, everything came tumbling out. And they said to me, but I told you I don't want to talk about this. So I was like, you know what? She needed to talk about this. She needed to let everything go, because there were things, from childhood and everything that had prevented her from really letting go of what she had gone through, processing it and so forth. And by the end of it, she was like, you know what, this actually helped. And she was able to tell me more than what she had told her therapist that she saw during that time. And I think that is the thing with kink and so on, is that we allow people the freedom to let go. Where even in traditional therapy sessions, you're still so worried about what you're actually telling this person sitting across from you.
It sounds like she had an incredibly cathartic experience. Mm. Mm.
Yes, it definitely was for her.
Mm.
And that is what opened my eyes to wanting to explore more in terms of what I'm doing now.
Mhm. Mhm. And what are you doing now?
So at the moment, what I'm busy doing, because obviously it's a bit controversial,
Mm.
when you talk about kink and therapy and so on. So I'm busy exploring more about how therapeutic spanking can actually assist people
Oh.
in that catharsis that they need. And this is not saying that traditional therapy, needs to be now completely discarded. I feel that it's actually something that can work very well hand in hand.
I love
So,
the hand in hand.
yeah. So,
Mhm.
so that's why I'm exploring therapeutic spanking more, and why I
Mm.
decided, I need to do the educational work and so on, because people see things on the internet, and obviously it gives them certain ideas and so on, but it doesn't teach them what goes on behind the scenes.
Mm.
And that's why I started with the books, because obviously with the questions that I had been getting about my own experiences and so on. And I just thought, you know what? As I learn, I can help other people learn.
Mm. Mm. I love that. Okay, so how would you describe what ethical dominance looks like to you in practice? For someone listening that may be like you and exploring dominance for the first time, or they have a partner that's asking them to be dominant towards them, what kind of advice would you give them to ensure that they're being an ethical dominant as much as possible?
So I think that comes back to something that it's very old school BDSM, and gets referred to as the 4 pillars of BDSM, which is communication, honesty, respect, and trust. Because if you're not able to have open conversations with your partner, or even with yourself, then you're going to struggle with the ethical side of things as well. Because you need to learn that in order for BDSM to be ethical, you need to be able to discuss these things with your partner openly. And you need to be honest about what you want to get out of it as well. And if you're not going to have those kinds of conversations, then, you can't just, if you look at it from, as you said, ethical dominance, you can't just push your will down onto someone. So when it comes to ethical dominance, it's definitely have the conversations with the submissive,
Mm-hmm.
because, as I said, you can't push your will down onto somebody else. And you need to know what they are looking for out of their dynamic, and also what you're willing to give to their dynamic as the dominant in that situation.
Mm.
Because, we often see things where people are just, it's my way or the highway.
Mm.
Or if the dominant just starts talking to a submissive and they're like, whatever I say goes. And that is not how it works. With ethical dominance, that is what separates BDSM from abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are just going to push your will down onto somebody else, that is not BDSM. That is outright abuse of
Mm-hmm.
that person.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point, and one of the most important points that you could make, really. Mm. I'd love to explore a research article with you now that dives a little bit deeper into this. And it's a study by Taylor and Usher who explored how people make sense of BDSM. So they recruited 24 self-identified sadomasochists through SM clubs and social networks and interviewed them about their experience. And they showed that through the themes that emerged, BDSM is best understood not as deviance, which is what some people still unfortunately perceive it as, but as a structured, communicative practice rooted in negotiation, consent, and meaning making. So you've already spoken to how important communication is. Do you think that from the clients that you work with, many people underestimate the level of communication required in kink?
I definitely think so. Because if you look at a lot of things that's out there, it's people are like, when it comes to BDSM, as long as they get the yes, it's fine. But they don't realize what actually goes into that yes. Because it's not just from the submissive side or from the dominant side, it's everything that is linked to that. Because if you don't have those in-depth conversations, then you are probably going to end up doing more harm than good. And that is what is so important about this. And this is what a lot of people, as I said, don't realize, is that if you don't realize what goes into the communication for someone to be involved in BDSM and in kink, you're probably going to end up doing more harm than good. And that actually links back to one of my favorite sayings, which is, I will hurt you, but I won't harm you. And the thing is that we know that in BDSM, at some stage, somebody is going to end up with a red and tender tush. And you can heal, if something physically is a little bit more than what you were planning. But the emotional side, the mental side of things is dealt with via communication. And if we don't talk openly about what we want with the person that we're doing this with, and even with ourselves, we can cause irreparable harm to that person and even to ourselves as well.
And what about meaning making? The authors also found that BDSM was quite often about meaning making. Have you found that most clients you've worked with have a deeper meaning behind the kinks that they want to explore?
I think most do, because there's somewhere something that got stuck in your memory, for instance, and you want to relive that. And, it gives more meaning to what you've been going through. So whether it was a trauma that took place or whether it was a great, happy experience that you went through, things like this add to those meanings and to those experiences.
So one of the interesting phrases that I saw of yours was that you say that pleasure and power are not opposites, but languages. Can you expand a bit more on this idea? It sounds fascinating.
So power and pleasure are both languages because they communicate things that words often can't. And in BDSM, power is not just about control. It's a way of expressing trust, vulnerability, care, desire, and intention. And the way someone takes control, how they healed, set a boundary, follow a ritual, it all says something about what we do. And dominance and submission are often conversations that happen through the behavior, not just, through the spoken words. And pleasure works in the same way. It's, it's not just about sex or physical sensation. It can also be found in, when we anticipate what's happening, when we look at structure, especially also, if you've got a praise kink. So it's all about what brings someone pleasure without actually doing the physical part of things, because a lot of it is also on the emotional and the mental side of things. So it's definitely, it's forms of communication, and it helps people to express their needs and the need for connection and their identity, and also the need for intimacy in ways that can be far more honest than actually just using words.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? How all of those little unspoken things can also lead to pleasure.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Now, I also read that you create your own handcrafted paddles and canes, which is amazing. How did that process begin? Did you decide that you wanted something different that you could buy? You appreciate like your more handcrafted tools? Are you crafting other things already? How did that happen?
So what happened is I saw, I think, I can't remember where, paddles that will leave little designs and so on. And you don't actually get that in South Africa, from normal suppliers. And I started making those kinds of paddles. So it was kind of out of necessity that I started making paddles. And that then obviously led to doing custom work for people. And yeah, from about, when was it, last year, I started crafting canes. Because also the thing is, as much as I love red and black, anybody that follows me will know that. I just felt, you know what, it is kind of a very stereotypical color scheme. And I started doing the canes with like different colored handles. So if someone said to me, you know what, I want a cane with a pink handle, I was like, okay, you know what, I can do this for you. And that is then where I started making canes.
Beautiful. I'm curious to know, is the process of crafting these implements and knowing they're going to be used in BDSM, is that part of an erotic experience for you? Or is it more so just a handcrafting, could be any kind of implement that you're making?
So I do quite enjoy seeing the results from the paddles, especially the ones that leave like little designs, because even like with my personal paddles, if I spank someone with it, I can actually, my name will sit across their bum. And that's a lot of fun. And it's also a way for people to do branding without it being permanent. They can have the fun of seeing their name across their partner's tush, without having to worry, that 6 months down the line, somebody is not going to be very happy with having a name across their tush.
How fun.
So it's a lot of fun for me. It's not necessarily an erotic experience for me, but it's definitely a lot of fun to see it.
Okay, so as part of our conversation today, I asked you to bring along something to share, such as a quote, book, or a movie that's influenced your erotic realm. What have you brought along today, and how has it influenced you?
So I think the quote that has influenced me is something that I mentioned earlier. And it's a quote that I learned when I just started in BDSM. And that was I will hurt you but not harm you. And that is how I've been dealing with everything, and how I've been working on how I deal with people, what I put out there in terms of my writing and educational content. Because, we can heal from physical things, but I think stuff that cuts the deepest is the emotional, the mental harm that can happen. And that is something that I very much try to minimize with my writing, because a lot of people, they see what goes on in the internet, they watch videos and so on, and then they try and reenact it without realizing how much actually goes into it. And that is why that is such an important quote for me, and something that is so close to my heart.
Yeah, it's a brilliant quote, and one that's really important to live by in BDSM. So thank you for sharing it. Do you know who wrote it at all, or is it more something that's just been shared to be abided by in the community?
I have no idea. It's something that was said to me by my first ever submissive,
Mm-hmm.
because he said it was something that he had learned.
Mm.
And he, at that stage, was probably a 30-year veteran.
Mm.
Um, so I'm not sure where it came from, but
Yeah.
it's something that just has absolutely stuck with me.
Yep, I can see why. Okay, so you've been on quite a journey the last 5-6 years, as you mentioned.
Mm.
When you think about a peak erotic experience, a time that's really stayed in your memory from this journey so far, what comes to mind?
I think it's probably when I started doing the self ties and realizing that, you know what, this is something that helps still my mind. And obviously, if it's a play session, then it's something that just heightens my senses. And that is definitely something that I enjoy, and that has probably been one of the more eye-opening experiences in my kink journey as well.
I love that because it shows that peak erotic experiences don't always have to involve someone else. It can be an experience that you're having with yourself. Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. And what about your future? What's something that you're looking forward to exploring in the future? A particular kink or erotic event that you're hoping to go to? What's next for Ms Hyde?
Well, I think something that's definitely on my bucket list is exploring Europe more in terms of BDSM and so on,
Mm.
because it is one of the areas where kink is a lot more open, um, or out in the open, I'd rather say, than what it is, for instance, here in South Africa. I mean, with us, you know, as open as our country is about people having agency in things that they enjoy and their lives and so on, it is still something that a lot of people don't understand. So it would definitely be something wonderful if I could, you know, go and explore it somewhere where I don't have to worry about hiding what I do, you know, or being greeted with someone, you know, making a comment about like, oh, that's disgusting, you know. So that's definitely something that's on my bucket list.
Well, I hope that happens sooner than later for you. Now, looking back on your journey again, what do you think has been the most important lesson that you've personally learned about power, intimacy, and kink that you would like to share with those listening?
I think one of the most important things that I've started to experience and that I've learned is that as long as your kinks don't harm anybody else, don't be ashamed of them.
Mm.
Because we've got so often that, you know, we think, okay, but I enjoy this. But what are people going to think when they hear that I enjoy this? You know, that I enjoy getting spanked to the point of orgasming. You know, so that is definitely something that I've learned, is that as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else or harm anybody else, um, and you know it's within legal bounds, definitely don't be ashamed of it. Embrace it.
Yes, no to shame and yes to embracing.
Yes.
I was looking at your writing on FetLife and I saw that you recently wrote and posted a piece about repair in a kink context. And I was wondering if you would do us the honour of reading us this piece today, because I feel like it highlights such an important aspect of what we do as kinksters. And I feel like the listeners would love to hear some of your writing. Would you be okay with that?
Okay. So the piece that I'm going to be reading for us is about repair as an act of care when something goes wrong. And, you know, it's those difficult moments when it's probably going to be the most difficult, most awkward kind of conversation that you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So, repair as an act of care. Repair is often misunderstood. People tend to treat it as something you do after something has gone wrong, a kind of cleanup process meant to restore order as quickly as possible, fix the issues, smooth things over, return to normal. It becomes about resolution, about getting past the moment. But repair, when it's done properly, is not about returning to how things were. It's about what you are willing to do when something does not go as planned. When something misaligns, whether through miscommunication, hurt, or misunderstanding, there is always a moment of choice. It may be quiet, almost unnoticeable, but it is there. You can move away from it, you can minimize it, let it pass without fully engaging, or you can turn toward it. Repair begins in that turning. It's not driven by urgency, it's driven by attention. It asks you to stay with the moment long enough to understand it, rather than rushing to resolve it. That willingness on its own communicates something meaningful. It says that the connection is not only valued when it's easy, it says that the relationship can hold discomfort without needing to avoid it. There is also a difference between fixing and repairing, and that distinction matters more than it seems. Fixing is about removing the problem. It looks for a solution, something that will make the tension disappear. Repairing is about understanding the impact and responding to it in a way that restores connection. It is slower, it is more deliberate. It involves listening without interruption, acknowledging what was experienced, and adjusting where needed. It does not rush to closure. It allows the moment to be fully seen before moving forward. In many cases, what people need most in moments of repair is not a solution. They need recognition. They need to feel that what they experienced mattered, what they were heard without being corrected. Sorry, that they were heard without being corrected, softened or dismissed. That the other person is willing to stay present with what happened rather than stepping around it. And when that happens, something shifts. The moment is no longer just about what went wrong. It becomes about how both people are choosing to engage with it. And that is where repair becomes an act of care. Not something done out of obligation, but something offered with intention. It shows respect to the other person's experience. It shows investment in the relationship itself. It communicates that connection is worth the effort it takes to understand, not just maintain. In kink and power exchange dynamics, repair carries additional weight. These dynamics are built on trust, communication, and a shared understanding of boundaries and expectations. When something goes wrong, even in a small way, the response to that moment shapes how safe the dynamic continues to feel. Repair is what reinforces that safety. It shows that even when missteps happen, there is a way of addressing them that is grounded, attentive, and respectful. It reassures both people that the dynamic is not fragile, but responsive. It is also important to recognize that repair is not always immediate. Sometimes space is needed. Sometimes emotions need time to settle before a meaningful conversation can take place. Allowing that space while still remaining engaged and available is part of the process. Repair is not about speed. It is about sincerity. When repair is approached as an act of care rather than a task to complete, the entire tone of the interaction shifts. The focus moves away from how do we fix this quickly and toward how do we understand this properly. That shift is what allows relationships to deepen over time, even through moments of tension or misalignment. Because repair is not just about what went wrong, it's about how you choose to show up when it does.
Wow. Yeah, it really speaks to me, and that's such a powerful piece of writing. It's so clear, and I love the focus on the slow, deliberate repair as opposed to a quick fix, because I feel like when something does go wrong in relationships and kinky relationships, it's quite easy to want to rush it and want to fix it quickly and miss that beautiful, slow, deliberate repair that you make so clear in that writing. So thank you for that piece. It's really powerful. Mm.
No, thank you so much.
Mm. So, Ms Hyde, where can people find out more about you and your work?
So I am available to follow on FedLife as well as Substack. And then my books are also available on PayHip.
Wonderful. And finally, if you had to describe your erotic self in one word and one word only, what would that word be at the moment and why?
Okay, so I'm going to speak to my submissive side.
Mm-hmm.
And that is definitely, I think, the word slut.
Mm.
The reason for that is that, when I'm in a relationship with someone, I'm an absolute slut for that person. And I actually think that's something that we need to reclaim as women, is that word, because it has gotten such negative connotations over the years. And it actually just means, we are passionate about the people that we're with.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Beautiful. Here's to more sluttery.
Definitely.
Well, Ms. Hyde, thank you for sharing your perspective on power, consent, and the psychology of intimacy and the work that you're doing. It really brings a level of clarity and integrity to the space, and I think it's incredibly valuable, especially for those new to the scene. So thank you for taking us into your erotic realm today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you again. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm Podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Erotic Realm Podcast. This is an independent podcast. If you want to see more episodes made, you can support it at psychologyofdesire.com by becoming a paid subscriber and entering the realm with many other supporters. The mission of the Erotic Realm is to humanize kink and desire in all of its forms. And we can't do that without you. Until the next time, stay perverted.